Okay, so hello everybody. You already know how these guides generally work, but just to clarify and for everybody who hasn't been here before, here's how it works. Step 1, basically we overview the deck. Step 2, we go over card changes you can make in order to make it better. Or more budget. That one is really only for the fully made decks. And 3, it's matchups, mulligans, and win rates. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. This deck is a standard Tempo Mage deck with 4 key cards taken out, being 2 primordial glyphs, Stargazer Luna, and Aluneth. For those, I put in a Polymorph, a lifedrinker, and 2 astral rifts. Astral rifts are the key here. The astral rifts gives you 2 minions, and even if they're not like amazing minions, even if they're just like average value minions, it gives you some extra fuel. So if you're playing against somebody and you need that little bit of extra oomph, a little bit of extra fuel to get you there, this can definitely give it to you. The deck as a whole works as a fully aggro deck. You just go face with pretty much everything, except you can polymorph high priority targets and the shooting star card, which does 1 damage to a minion and then to the minions next to it, comboed with a card that, say, it can be comboed with, oh my goodness, what is it called? This is very unprofessional, I know. Celestial Emissary or Cosmic Anomaly. I had to quickly look that up, I'm sorry. Those can deal 3 damage to a minion and the minions next to it, which does very well against Zulok and Hunter, which we will get into a second when we go into matchups. This deck, other than a few things you can use to remove cards, and even Cinderstorm if you want to get RNG, like ping a Divine Shield with the Giggling Inventor, which summons 2 Annoyatrons or whatever. It's definitely mostly a face deck. That's pretty much all there is to it. It's limited on card draw, so you really gotta get the most out of everything, which is why you gotta go face as hard and fully commit, because if you don't fully commit to going face, you'll run out of fuel before you actually are able to kill the opponent. Changes you can make to the deck, as I said, there's Stargazer Luna and Aluneth, which I would take out which I would put in for the Astral Rifts. The Astral Rifts are a little bit of extra card draw that really allow you to get a little bit of extra fuel, but with Aluneth and Stargazer Luna, that is not really an issue. And to be quite honest, it's just not. Because you'll get a ton of extra fuel that way. After Aluneth is played, you'll get, let's say, 6 cards in 2 turns after you play it, which is a lot more than even 2 Astral Rifts could even get you at all. And Stargazer Luna, you'll get a couple of cards out of that, but it's also a minion that they have to deal with on the board. That's a 2/4 for 3, which is not terrible. It's not amazing stats, but that is an average stat line. For Primordial Glyph, I take out the Lifedrinker and Polymorph, because Lifedrinker, Primordial Glyph can get you a Fireball or a Frostbolt, which does the same amount of damage to the person, and honestly, you don't really need the heal for a Tempo Mage. If you need the heal, then you're probably going to lose anyway, if you're in a losing position as a Tempo Mage, because you're supposed to have the Tempo. If you've lost Tempo and need heal, you're probably going to lose. And then the other card that I would take out is the Polymorph, because if needed, you could find the Tempo, you could find the Polymorph from Primordial Glyph. The Polymorph is really just to deal with the big taunt minion in the way, so you could go face with a few minions that you have on the board. That's pretty much all the cards that I would put in. Everything else is a pretty standard Tempo Mage deck, which is honestly not an amazing deck, but for its budget, I would say that it's a pretty good deck. The fully made deck is not super worth it in my opinion, only because it needs 2 legendaries, and it only increases the win rate as a whole by like 2% from my experience. So it's okay. It's fine. I'd still make the upgrades because it definitely makes the deck better, but this is one of those ones where it's definitely okay to not put the upgrades in. So let's go into the matchups real quick. First, actually, no, we're going to go into the mulligans real quick, just because the mulligan is basically the same for every single class, except for a few exceptions, which I'll get into. Basically, Mana Worm, Arcanologist, Tor Mage, those are the three. You want those three in your hand. If you can have those three in your hand, amazing value. Turn 1 Mana Worm, turn 2 Arcanologist, turn 3 the Tor Mage with another 3 mana spell. It's like a 6 mana play on turn 3. The other cards that you can keep in this budget deck are Sorcerer's Apprentice, Shooting Star, and Frostbolt. Frostbolt is okay against some tempo decks, aggro decks, so you can kill a minion when they play it. Or if it's like Odd Rogue, you can Frostbolt their face so they can't hit you with a weapon. Sorcerer's Apprentice is pretty good against slower decks and even aggro decks. This is the ideal pick for as your 4th card if it's like a coin or something, or even as replacement for any of the other 3. Sorcerer's Apprentice is good because it's a minion on the board that they have to deal with as a control, and against aggro, it's a minion that you can use to trade into things if absolutely needed, or use to race them to the face. And then the last one is Shooting Star. It's good against aggro decks because that, again, comboed with Cosmic Anomaly and the Celestial Emissary with the 2 extra spell damage can easily deal with 3 health things, and it can deal with 3 of them. It's just very, very solid. So without further ado, we'll just go into the actual matchups themselves. Against Druid, I am 4 and 4. Honestly, I'm surprised that this deck was 50-50. I thought it would be worse, but because of the fact that this deck can go face effectively and maybe get into a winning position before the person gets to Malfurion is huge. And also, if you get lucky and with the Arcanologist get a counterspell, you can time the counterspell correctly to counterspell the Nourish on turn 5. Assuming they don't like bait it out with coin or something. Like if it's a standard Druid, you can get rid of their Nourish, which is a lot of ramp, and honestly that wastes their turn 5, which means you basically get a free turn to whack them in the face. So really, this matchup can be pretty good for you if you get a counterspell. If you don't, it can be a little bit rough. And the mulligans for this, just do the standard mulligan, and then I keep Sorcerer's Apprentice over Frostbolt, because Sorcerer's Apprentice is an actual minion that he has to deal with. Frostbolt really doesn't do too much in terms of like board presence. The next matchup is Hunter, which is rough, and it makes sense because Hunter has the highest win rates in the game, basically. According to Hearthstone replay, it has 3 of the top 7 decks in the game right now, which is incredible. It has Hybrid Hunter, which I've done a budget deck on before, but I may do again for the new season because it's gotten upgrades. Spell Hunter, which I've done a guide on before, but it also has gotten upgrades, and it also has Death Rattle Hunter, which I'm doing now, and I feel is the worst of the 3. Oh, voice crack there. But also, it is apparently better than Hybrid Hunter, so, you know, that shows what I know. Basically, how you win this matchup is you keep the cards that I told you to keep in the standard mulligan, and Sorcerer's Apprentice as the 4th card, or like a good alternative, and Frostbolt's okay too to kill an egg immediately. And the way that you win this is you go face and hope that they do not get their combos. That's basically it. It's that simple. If they get their combo with like the egg, or if they get tons of wolves, you're probably going to lose the game. But if they don't get that, or Rexar, then they have no real way of fighting back against you, and you can definitely win pretty easily against them. But I'm 2 and 3 because a lot of times they are able to get their combos off. They get the egg out, and they're able to use the Death Rattle on it, or even if you're forced to kill it, they get a 5/5 out of it, and then now you're on your heels. Now they're pushing you back with their increased tempo. So if they don't get the egg as Death Rattle Hunter, if they don't get a buffed beast as Hybrid Hunter, and they don't get tons of wolves as Spell Hunter, which you can actually respond to the wolves by using the Celestial Emissary and Shooting Star, or Cosmic Anomaly Shooting Star play. But that aside, if they don't get those like combos off, and then Spell Hunter also has 2 my side, if they can't get those off and don't get lucky and don't get Rexar and stuff, you win. If they do, it's rough. But you can maybe close out the game depending on how fast you played. But if they get Rexar, that one's really rough because he gets armor and then can get lifesteal minions. So it's a losing matchup just because Hunter beats a lot of decks right now. Mage, 2 and 1 into Mage, beaten 2 mirror matches, and I think that this deck actually does well into the mirror match, and I'll get to that in a second. But its 1 loss is against Big Mage because turn 7, the Artificer Then Blizzard kills your minions, freezes like 1 or 2 more. He gains 6 armor, and you have to play a fireball just to get back to where you were. So unless he's at like 1 health and you can fireball ping him, you're probably going to lose once he gets the artificer out, because then you have to also use one of your burn spells to target it. And that means you do less damage, he's gained armor, and overall it's just a bad experience for you. And the one game I played against it was close, but alas, I lost, because he got the artificer out on turn 7, and then Blizzard did. The Tempo Mage matchup, though, that I think is actually in favor of the budget deck. Now, let me explain to you why. So, on turn 3, you play a mediocre minion. Okay. And or like the one that allows you to draw cards. Or you might play it later on, but it's an okay turn 3 play, I guess. It's a card that with the actual deck you keep, and sometimes play on turn 3. But with this deck, there isn't that alternative. So you play the 4/3 Tor Mage, play a secret. With the Tor Mage, you can kill the 2/4. It'll live. It'll get pinged the next turn, but that's fine. And you just have increased tempo that way. Like, he gets an extra card or 2, but you have an extra minion on board. And when you guys are trying to race to the face, the extra minion and the little bit of extra damage he can do, or the fact that he's going to waste his turn to ping it and play a suboptimal turn after, is actually pretty big for this deck. This is how I won one of the matchups, where he did that. I kept a Tor Mage. He didn't ping it. I did 4 damage. He didn't ping it. The next turn did 4 more. And then he finally pinged it after it had done 8 damage to him. And that was huge. Like, that 8 damage was definitely probably what won me the game. No, it was definitely what won me that game. And then against the other one, Aluneth on turn 6. That means on turn 6 he's doing nothing. So if you still have cards in your hand, which you should have at least some fuel with Astral Rifts or Arcane Intellect, you can gain a little more board presence than he has, or she. Not going to be sexist or anything. I don't know why I added that into this. I was moving on. You can use that turn 6 to gain quite a bit of tempo and potentially close the game out while he's trying to draw cards. The next matchup is Paladin. You'll lose this. Just get over it. He's going to get a ton of 1/1s, trading into all of your minions, and you don't even have a lot of minions because most of your things are spell-based, and then he just outraces you. Even if you counterspell the level up, which I was able to do. I used counterspell. I waited 1 turn to play the Tor Mage and the counterspell until turn 4, so his turn 5, he tried to level up. I countered it, but he still won because he had too many minions. He just loses matchup, even if you play it really well. Just because he can create so many 1/1s. Like, there is not a way you win this matchup. It's just not possible. Against Odd Rogue, it's okay. If you have to deal with his turn 3 4/4 with the Thug, you can Frostbolt it, ping it, potentially. You can Polymorph things. He hits his face into your minions and has no heal, so burn is actually pretty decent against him and it allows you to close out the game. And I want to know against it, so that's not like a huge sample size, but I still feel like it's a pretty good matchup for you because he still takes damage from your minions hitting it with his face, his weapon, and then you're able to burn him. So I think it's an okay matchup. Pretty good matchup. Maybe not like hugely in your favor because he's trying to rush you down 2 and can easily do that, especially if he has like Leroy and stuff. But I think it's at least a 50-50. Shaman, 1 and 2 against that. This one, Healing Rain is the bane of your existence in this one. You get him low, he Healing Rains, you can't do anything. Against Even, the board is too wide, you can't deal with all of those minions. And this deck can beat the control version like Shudderwalk or Midrange Shaman, assuming he doesn't have Healing Rain, which is what happened one of the games, which is why I won one. Other than that, not super important. Not a super good matchup for you. Against Warlock, you beat Warlock because he uses his hero power to deal damage to himself in order to try to draw cards to, play a ton of minions, especially Zulok. And as Evenlock, you're taking damage every turn, so you can have as many cards as possible. So you can lifesteal, and so you can get a 7/7 taunt out for 4 mana. But since he's doing damage to himself, if he doesn't get as many heal cards as he needs, you can just burn him down. Easily. Like, he will hero power probably 4 times. He'll probably heal himself for like 4. This is against Zoo. 2 things that heal his face. he's still taking 4 damage. And against a tempo deck where you're trying to burn down with spells, that's huge. Against even, he has more heal at his disposal, but he's also life tapping more and doing more damage to himself. So you can definitely close that game out too. And then the last thing we have is Warrior. I'm 2-1 against Warrior. I actually don't know how. I feel like with all the armor that they gain, I shouldn't win. But I guess I rush him down fast enough. And an early explosive ruins to kill the first taunt that he plays that usually is meant to like stall out. You kill that Tar Creeper on turn 3. You go face with your Mana Worm and Sorcerer's Apprentice and Corn the Tor Mage for an extra like 8-9 damage. Busted. Like, that's like 9 damage because he had to commit to trying to play a taunt. And if he doesn't and plays like Shield Up, no, it's not Shields Up. Oh my goodness, how am I forgetting? The 5 armor, 1 card. If you guys tell me in the comments, I'm gonna have to look this up after. I'm gonna be kicking myself for not remembering the name. But armor up, maybe. Not important. Anyway. That card, then you still have a full board, and he hasn't even procced the secret yet. It's just going to get popped in the near future. So I see how this deck works, especially if he doesn't get like an amazing brawl. Even if he Blood Razors, he has to hit the minion. 1 or 2 of your minions will live after that. Yeah, I can see how this deck wins if you're able to go fast and get there before he's able to brawl and totally wipe your board. Mulligans, I told you the one for Druid. I forgot to tell you the ones for the other ones. And Hunter. Shooting Star is actually pretty high priority. Against Mage, Sorcerer's Apprentice is pretty big because it's good against both matchups. Against Mage, you can definitely get against a Tempo, and this is a 3/2 minion for 2 with an ability, which is pretty solid, pretty good for Tempo. And if it's against a slow big Mage, then all of your spells are lowered by 1. You can just increase the pace extremely easily with this. Against Paladin, nothing really you can do, just a standard mulligan. Maybe keep Cinderstorm into this one, so you can deal with his wide board and Shooting Star. But other than that, there's really not much you can do. Let's see, and then against, what's it called? Priest. Now, I have not played a single game against Priest with this deck. I can't really help you there. Against a Rogue, standard, I'd say, and I'd keep Frostbolt as my 4th card, maybe over Sorcerer's Apprentice. Although, if you have Sorcerer's Apprentice, don't get rid of it. But if you have Frostbolt, keep it. Frostbolt is face so you can't trade into your minions with his dagger, and you're able to do a little bit more damage with them. That's actually pretty nice to do. Against, let's say, Shaman. What you want to do, standard again, and I'd say Sorcerer's Apprentice, because it's similar to the Mage matchup. There's a control version and a aggro version, and the Sorcerer's Apprentice is the most versatile of all of the 3 like 4th pick cards. Sorcerer's Apprentice is definitely the best of the 3 choices because it can be a minion that can trade into things, or it can be a minion that goes face and increases tempo, whereas the other 2 are specifically good in certain things, being... Actually, no, Shooting Star and Frostbolt are both good into aggro. Against control, Sorcerer's Apprentice is definitely the big one. Against Warlock, because Even and Zoo are both like very popular, although I think Zoo might be a little more popular, I'd say... I don't know. Again, definitely Sorcerer's Apprentice, and because of the fact that it's Zoo a lot, I'd go with Shooting Star and Frostbolt as well, to be quite honest. Any of those 3 work into this one, just because it's totally random which one you could play. It's a similar thing to the Mage and the Shaman matchup, but in this one, it's a little more likely that they're aggro, so I'd say it's safer to keep the 2 cards that deal with aggro. And against Warrior, I actually still don't fully understand how I beat it, but I would keep Sorcerer's Apprentice, and maybe even an Explosive Ruins if you have like a Tor Mage in your hand or something, just so we can deal with that first taunt. Anyway, that's basically the guide for this video. All of my guides have been about 20 minutes. I really like these guides, and I hope that you guys all learned something and made it this far. If you made it this far, I guess follow me on Twitter, ElementalCore1. Subscribe, like, comment any questions. The card that I forgot the name of, definitely tell me that so I can be upset with myself for not remembering it, even though it's been a card that's been in the game since Classic. And I hope you guys enjoyed, because I enjoyed making the video and I enjoyed playing this deck quite a bit. See ya.